Hey everyone, before we get into today's story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever stayed in a relationship longer than you should have, just because walking away felt impossible? Because sometimes, the hardest decision in the world isn't fighting for someone. It's finally deciding you're done fighting at all. Well, today's story comes from someone who did exactly that. He spent years believing his marriage could still be saved, until one moment changed everything. And when he finally walked away, his wife couldn't believe he actually meant it. So let's get into today's story. I left my wife, and she still can't believe I did it. I'm currently sitting in a gas station parking lot, 300 miles away from the house I've lived in for 10 years, watching my phone screen light up, with the 40th missed call from my wife. She's at the French place downtown, the one with the 6-month waiting list, wearing the dress I bought her for our anniversary, staring at an empty chair, while the waiter probably hovers awkwardly, with a bottle of champagne. She thinks I'm running late. She thinks I'm stuck in traffic. Or maybe that I had a flat tire. What she doesn't know is this. The house she's going home to is half empty, and the emergency fund we've been building for a decade is sitting in a private account she can't touch. I know how this sounds. I know it makes me look like the villain of the year. You don't just walk out on a 10-year marriage, on the night of your anniversary, without a word. But if you'd seen what I found in her nightstand last week, you'd realize something. The person sitting in that restaurant isn't actually my wife. She's a stranger I've been subsidizing for a decade. Our marriage was, by all accounts, perfect. She's beautiful, funny, and has this way of making everyone in a room feel like they're the most important person there. I was the lucky one. That's what our friends said. That's what my parents said. I was the quiet, hardworking guy who somehow landed the girl of everyone's dreams. And for a long time, I believed it. I spent 10 years making sure she had everything. I worked 80-hour weeks so she could pursue her passions that never quite turned into a career. I moved across the country twice. For her, fresh starts. But the perfect facade started to crack about 6 months ago. It wasn't anything big, just a feeling, a coldness that would settle over her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. It was the way she started talking about our future, like it was a business transaction. Then came the phone calls she'd taken the bathroom, and the way she suddenly had girls' nights 3 times a week with people I'd never met. The breaking point happened last Tuesday. I was looking for a spare charger in her nightstand when I found a leather-bound journal. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that. But the first page I saw wasn't a diary entry. It was a list titled Exit Strategy. Underneath were bullet points detailing exactly how she was going to divorce me once I finished paying off her remaining student loans and her car. There were dates, names of lawyers, and a calculated breakdown of how much alimony she could squeeze out of me based on my projected salary. But the worst part wasn't the money. The worst part was a note tucked into the back of the book, a handwritten letter from someone I didn't recognize, dated from 3 years ago. The letter thanked her for the investment and mentioned how much they missed her during our vacations. I sat on the floor of our bedroom for an hour, the world spinning. And that's when it hit me. My entire adult life had been a script. I wasn't her partner. I was her retirement plan. And that's when the good guy in me died. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I went to the kitchen, made a sandwich, and started my own strategy. If she wanted a calculated exit, I would give her one. She'd never forget. I spent the last week slowly moving my essentials to a storage unit. I drained the joint savings, money that I had earned 90% of, and moved it to an offshore digital wallet. And then I made the reservation for our anniversary. I told her it was a surprise. I told her I had a big announcement. Now I'm sitting here in the dark, watching my phone buzz one last time before I pull the SIM card out and toss it into the trash. A message flashes on the screen. A text from her. Where are you? I'm starting to get scared. Please tell me you're okay. For a second, I feel a twinge of guilt. But then I remember the list. I remember the 3 years of betrayal. I shift the car into drive and start heading further south. But as I merge onto the highway, something catches my eye. A black sedan, pulling out of the gas station, right behind me. It had been there for the last 20 minutes. Every time I change lanes, it changes lanes. Every time I slow down, it slows down. And suddenly I realize something. She wasn't the only one with a secret. I'd been so focused on her exit strategy that I never stopped to ask who was helping her write it. And now, I think they're coming to collect. The sedan stayed exactly 3 car lengths behind me. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid, that it was just another traveler heading toward the coast. But my gut was screaming. I took a random exit into a sleepy, one-stoplight town and pulled into a crowded diner parking lot. The sedan didn't follow me in. It kept going, disappearing into the dark. I sat there for 10 minutes, my hands gripping the steering wheel, so hard they were white. Finally, I pulled out my laptop and logged into the home security system. The one thing I hadn't disconnected yet. I wanted to see her reaction. When she got home, I needed to see. The moment the mask fell off, she walked through the door. At 11:30 p.m., she looked frantic, pacing the living room, still in that expensive dress, clutching her phone to her ear. I could hear her voice through the internal mic. She was calling my mother. She was crying, real, sobbing tears. It was a masterclass in performance. For a second, I almost believed her. I almost turned the car around. Then, her phone rang. She answered instantly, and her voice changed from a sob to a sharp, cold whisper. "He's gone," she said. "The house is half empty. He took the dogs and the documents. No, I don't know how he found out. He's been acting like a mindless drone for months." There was a pause as she listened to the person on the other end. Her face hardened, becoming something sharp, something predatory. "If he has the drive, we're dead," she snapped. "You told me he never looks in that drawer. You said he was too stupid to suspect anything. Find him. I don't care what you have to do. Just get that drive back before he looks at the files." I closed the laptop. My heart was thumping against my ribs. The drive. In my rush to drain the accounts and pack my life, I had grabbed a small, encrypted, external drive from her desk, thinking it just contained her passions, her photography and design work. I'd intended to keep it as leverage for the divorce, but I hadn't actually opened it yet. I reached into my bag and pulled it out, a heavy, military-grade silver casing. I went inside the diner, found a booth in the back, and plugged the drive into my laptop. It was password protected, but she was predictable. I tried the date of our wedding. Locked. I tried the name of her childhood dog. Locked. Then, I tried the name from the handwritten letter I'd found in her journal. Access granted. The folders weren't filled with photos. They were filled with scans, legal documents, bank statements, and something that looked like a ledger. I'm an accountant by trade, so I know how to read a balance sheet. But these numbers didn't make sense. There were millions of dollars moving through accounts tied to a nonprofit she volunteered for, but the money wasn't going to charity. It was being funneled into private holdings in Eastern Europe. I scrolled down to a folder labeled Assets. I clicked it, expecting to see property or stocks. Instead, I saw photos. Photos of men. Dozens of them. All of them looked like me. Average, hardworking, lucky guys. And next to each photo was a date, a start date, and an end date. Some were 2 years. Some were 5. I was the longest running entry on the list. 10 years. Underneath my photo was a notes section. It read, "Subject is stable, high earning, and low risk. Transition to final phase scheduled for anniversary night. Expected yield, $1.2 million. I felt the air leave my lungs. I wasn't just a retirement plan. I was a target, part of a long con operation. The anniversary dinner wasn't just a celebration. It was supposed to be the night I signed the new insurance papers she'd been nagging me about, the ones with the accidental death clause. I looked up from the screen, and my blood turned to ice. Standing outside the diner window, illuminated by the neon sign, was the man from the black sedan. He wasn't looking at the diner. He was looking directly at me. He tapped on the glass. On his hand, a wedding ring, one that looked identical to mine. He didn't look like a thug. He looked like a professional. He pointed to the laptop, then to the door. He was giving me a choice. Walk out with the drive, or they'd come in and get it. I looked around the diner. The waitress, the old couple, in the booth across from me, the teenager, behind the counter. If I stayed here, people were going to get hurt. So I stood up, tucked the laptop into my bag, and walked toward the back exit. I didn't have a plan, but I had the drive. And for the first time in 10 years, I finally knew Exactly who I was married to. I didn't go to the back exit. That's what they expected. Instead, I ducked into the kitchen, ignored the startled shout of the line cook, and slipped out through the loading dock. I ran through the dark alleyways of the small town, my lungs burning, until I found a rusted-out pickup truck with the keys left in the ignition. It's a small town. People are trusting. I felt like a piece of garbage for stealing it, but I told myself I'd leave it somewhere. They could find it. I drove without lights for 2 miles until I hit a dirt service road. I needed to think. My wife wasn't just a cheater or a gold digger. She was part of something much bigger, a literal industry built on destroying men like me. And the final phase she mentioned, it wasn't divorce. It was a funeral. My phone, the one I'd supposedly tossed, vibrated in my pocket. I hadn't tossed it. I'd kept it on silent. I pulled it out. There was a new message, but not from her. From a blocked number. You're clever. I'll give you that. But you're an accountant, not a spy. You have something that doesn't belong to you. Give us the drive, and we let you keep the money you stole from the joint account. You can disappear. You can have the fresh start you wanted. I stared at the screen. They were negotiating, which meant they were scared. The drive didn't just have my yield on it. It had the names, the blueprints, for their entire operation. I typed back, I want to talk to her. Put her on. A minute later, the phone rang. I answered. You really ruined it, didn't you? Her voice was flat, devoid of the warmth I'd lived with for a decade. The crying was gone. The scared wife was dead. We had such a good thing going. You were so easy to take care of. All I had to do was smile, tell you how much I appreciated your hard work, and you'd give me anything. Was any of it real? It was a stupid question, a cliche, but I needed to hear it. She laughed, a sharp, cold sound. The first year was okay. You were sweet, but you're boring. You're a safe, predictable man who thinks being good is enough. It's not. People like me deserve more than a safe life. We deserve the world. And people like you are the fuel we use to get there. I have the ledger, I said, my voice hardening. I know about the Eastern European accounts. I know about the other men. If I don't check in with a friend in the next hour, this entire drive gets uploaded to the FBI and every major news outlet in the country. You don't have any friends. She sneered. I made sure of that. I spent 10 years isolating you, remember? Your parents think you're having a mental breakdown. Your coworkers think you've been embezzling. Who's going to believe the boring accountant over the grieving, beautiful wife? She was right. She had played the long game, spent years planting seeds of doubt about my stability. So when the accident finally happened, no one would question it. I'm not the man I was 6 hours ago. I said, I've already sent a copy of the exit strategy list to your parents. I wonder how they'll feel, knowing their perfect daughter is a professional widow. The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, I'd hit a nerve. Her parents were the only people she actually seemed to care about, or at least the only people whose opinion affected her ego. Where are you? She hissed. I'm at the place where we had our first date. I lied. The old pier. I'll give you the drive, but I want you to come alone. No sedan, no professionals, just you and me, finishing this. Fine, she said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead, but I wasn't at the pier. I was at a 24-hour internet cafe in a completely different town, and I wasn't uploading the files to the FBI. I was doing something much more morally questionable. I'm an accountant. I know how to move money, and I knew the people she worked for, the ones in the black sedan, didn't care about her. They cared about the millions in those accounts. So I spent the next 15 minutes using the encryption keys on the drive to reroute every single cent of their Eastern European holdings. I didn't send it to myself. I sent it to a series of untraceable burn wallets. Then I sent a small, anonymous tip to the IRS and the Interpol Financial Crimes Division about the original account holders. I didn't just take her money. I made her and her employers the biggest targets in the world of international finance. I walked out of the internet cafe just as the black sedan pulled into the parking lot. They had tracked the IP address fast, but I wasn't running anymore. I stood beside the stolen truck and waited. The man with the wedding ring stepped out of the sedan. He looked frustrated, no gun in his hand, but his fingers hovered near his jacket. "Where is she?" he asked. "She's at the pier," I said, leaning against the stolen truck, waiting for a husband who isn't coming. "But you have bigger problems right now." I turned the laptop screen toward him. A bright notification filled the display. Transaction complete. And beneath it, a copy of the email I'd sent to the authorities. "The money is gone," I said calmly, "and the trail leads directly to the nonprofit she's been using as a front. In about 10 minutes, every account tied to your organization is going to be flagged. You aren't professionals anymore. Your liabilities." The man's face went pale. He pulled out his phone, frantically checking something. His hand was shaking. "You're a dead man," he whispered. "Maybe," I said, "but I'm a dead man with nothing left to lose. You, on the other hand, your bosses are going to want to know why an average, low-risk subject just bankrupted the entire operation. I wonder who they'll blame, the accountant or the handler who let his target get his hands on the drive." I saw the shift in his eyes. He wasn't thinking about killing me anymore. He was thinking about survival. He turned around, got back into the sedan, and floored it. A cloud of dust filled the parking lot as the car vanished down the road. He wasn't going to the pier. He was going to disappear before his own people liquidated him. I sat down on the bumper of the truck, and for the first time in 10 years, I breathed. It's been 3 months since that night. I never went back. I never signed the divorce papers. I didn't have to. She disappeared about 48 hours after I left her at that restaurant. The news called it a tragic disappearance under suspicious circumstances. There was a search party. My mother cried on the news. Her parents blamed me, of course, but there was no evidence. I had an airtight alibi. A dozen security cameras showed me 3 states away at the exact time she went missing. Now I live in a small town in the mountains. New name, new dog, a quiet job at the local hardware store. I don't use my accounting degree. I don't look at my bank balance. I kept enough of the joint money to live comfortably, which I know makes me just as bad as her. In some people's eyes, I took money that wasn't technically mine. I stole a truck. I ruined lives. But sometimes, when I'm sitting on my porch, watching the sunset over the mountains, I think about that anniversary dinner. I picture her sitting there, waiting for the mindless drone to walk in, smile politely, and sign his own death warrant. She couldn't believe I left. She couldn't believe that the man she spent a decade studying had even a single spark of rebellion left in him. She thought she knew me perfectly, thought she had mapped every corner of my soul. But that's the thing about average guys. We're really good at blending in, really good at being exactly who you want us to be, until we aren't. Every now and then, I get a notification on an old, encrypted email address I set up. No text, just a single photo. A photo of a French restaurant. A photo of a black sedan. A photo of a leather-bound journal. I don't know if it's her, or if it's what's left of her organization trying to scare me. But I'm not scared. I already lived through 10 years of the perfect marriage. Nothing else can hurt me now. I'm just waiting for the next anniversary. And honestly, I wonder what I'll get myself this year. And that's where I'll leave this story tonight. A perfect marriage that turned out to be a 10-year con. A quiet accountant who finally stopped playing the role he was given. And a woman who thought she had planned every move, except one. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because there are plenty more stories like this. Strange, intense, and sometimes a little too real. And if you've ever trusted someone who turned out to be someone else entirely, just remember something. The quiet ones, the average ones, the people everyone underestimates, sometimes they're the ones who survive the longest. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.